Good morning, I'm Marta Elvira and I'm a professor of Managing People in Organizations at IESE Business School. And I have the pleasure to share this time with Patrick Lencioni, who is at the World Business Forum to share the insights about great teams, an area of research and expertise. He is the best-selling author of several books precisely on winning teams, and he especially focuses on creating healthy organizations, which is something that I am really interested in learning more about, because at IESE we are always concerned about business and leadership in the context of sustainable personhood, of people-centered and healthy type of approaches. Lencioni is currently the president and founder of the Table Group, a management consulting firm that specializes in enabling organizations and the people within them to become healthier and ultimately more effective. So if you allow me, what I'd like to learn more about is about what you have found out about organizational structures and setups that allow teams to be really winning.
Right. Well, you know, what we found is that a healthy organization really has four things, all healthy organizations have four things in common. First, you have to have a cohesive leadership team at the top. Mm-hmm. If the leaders at the top, and this is true whether we're talking about a multinational corporation or a smaller department within that corporation. So if you're a department head, the people that run that department have to be cohesive. And that just means, and that's what I talk about in my book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. They have to trust one another, engage in healthy conflict, and commit to decisions, all those things. But in addition to being cohesive behaviorally, they have to be intellectually aligned. Okay. They have to be on the same page, have the same answers to 6 critical questions, and everybody on the team needs to be exactly in the same place around those questions. Once you get behaviorally aligned and intellectually aligned, then you have to go out and communicate it all the time. You have to repeat yourself constantly to employees within the organization and others outside. It's that clarity, it's those answers to those questions you have to be constantly reinforcing. And then finally, you have to build just enough structure, just enough and no more, to reinforce those answers. You have to institutionalize your culture, so to speak, without bureaucratizing it. So if you can do that, build a cohesive team, create clarity, reinforce it through communication and through structural systems, you build a healthy organization that is going to find a way to succeed. Now, this stands in stark contrast to organizations that are focused on technical ability. Right. Which is, are we good at finance and strategy and marketing and technology? All things which I think are very important. Mm-hmm. But the world is full of companies that are good in those intellectual areas that find a way to fail because they're not functional. The world is not full of functional companies that fail because they're too dumb. Most organizations have plenty of intelligence and knowledge to succeed. They just don't tap into enough of it.
So you've also done research about the dysfunctions of teams.
Yes.
And I'm glad that we started with the healthy component. But could you share with us some of those dysfunctions that, for example, my executives that I'm teaching in New York today could benefit from learning and avoiding the pitfalls?
Sure. Yeah, the first dysfunction is the most critical, and that is it's an absence of trust. When there's no trust on an executive team, which means people on the team are not comfortable being vulnerable with one another. They can't admit when they're wrong, when they don't know the answer, when somebody else is smarter than they are. They can't apologize. When people are invulnerable, they make trust impossible. So an absence of trust is the first dysfunction of a team. Contrary to that, building trust is the first thing you have to do. Mm-hmm. The next dysfunction is the fear of conflict. People on executive teams, if they're afraid to engage with one another, they're afraid to disagree passionately around an issue, they're not going to be able to make good decisions. Mm-hmm. Now, again, this is predicated on trust. Because when there's trust on a team, then people can engage in conflict knowing that they're doing so in service of making the best answer or the best decision. When there's no trust, you can't engage in conflict because conflict without trust is politics. So fear of conflict is the second dysfunction. The next one is the inability to commit to a decision. Teams have to be able to, even if they disagree, at the end of the discussion they have to say, okay, this is the decision we're making, we're committed to it, we're going to help one another, even if it's not the decision I would have taken. This is where we're going, and we're going to work together. The fourth one is they have to hold each other accountable. The fear or the inability to hold people accountable. People are often unwilling to enter the danger, as we say, and hold someone accountable for being better. They say, I don't want to say anything to them. It's not my place. I don't know how they'll feel about it. Great team members care enough about each other that they will be uncomfortable and hold each other accountable for being better. They care enough about the team and about each other that they will say, I think you can be better. The final dysfunction of a team is the inattention to results. That's when people on the team are more interested in their own department, their own ego, their own status, their own career, their own budget, than they are in the collective results of the team. So those are the 5 dysfunctions, and if you can overcome those and embrace the opposites, you're going to build a great team.
And what's coming to mind as you speak is the typical debate about leadership. Are leaders born, nurture or nature? And I'm thinking, are all team members, in order to achieve competencies to be good team collaborators, are they born or can you actually teach them?
I think you can definitely teach them. I think for 95% of people, they can embrace the behaviors of teamwork if they're working in an organization that truly promotes that, that is truly intolerant of its opposite, and where the leader is truly committed. Most people will say, if this is what I have to do to succeed, then I'm going to do that. And I think there's a universal desire of people to do this. Now, there are those 5%, maybe it's 10, maybe it's 15, of people that, for whatever reason, because of their upbringing or their background, that are just incapable of being vulnerable. They're just not team players. There are those people in life that have just been reinforced for the wrong things for too long. But most people, I find, if you come into an organization, even if you inherit a team of people who haven't been team players, most people have the capacity to embrace those things if they're put in the right environment and if they're rewarded for doing so and not tolerated for doing the opposite.
One of the issues that you've also written about is about politics and turf wars.
Yes.
And I think it's easy to confuse leadership with overpowering use of politics or manipulative. Could you share with us your insights on differences between politics and authority?
Sure. Yeah, I think it's critical that a leader is comfortable with authority, but great leaders don't have to use it that often. Because they're credible and they built an environment where they place a premium on people being honest and trusting one another and engaging in healthy above-board conflict, that they don't have a desire to manipulate people. Now, there are organizations out there, and some successful ones that are built upon a model of the CEO manipulating people. They just happen to not usually be very good places to work, and their success is usually limited to the time that the CEO is there. The kind of organizations that build cultures that live on, built to last kind of cultures, as Jim Collins would say, are the ones I think where the leader, though they have a strong sense of their authority, don't have to use it very often because they create an environment where people know what they're supposed to do. They realize that at the end of the day, the CEO is the ultimate avenue for accountability, but they hold one another accountable. So I think that in most organizations, you should never manipulate and overuse your authority. But there are those organizations that do and succeed, but I think their success is usually short-lived.
Thank you very much for sharing this time with us and your insight. We look forward to having you at the school.
Thank you very much for having me.